Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining Talk Active, Leading Conversations. This is our premiere episode 1. So thank you so much for those who are already in. I'm extremely delighted to have you on. My name is Nonye and I will be your host on this webinar. So we're just going to go straight in. As many that join us afterwards, then we'll just come into the room. So it is great to see you, Alexis, Dr. Alexis Amaye, and great to see you, Nonye, Omotola. And we're just going to do a bit of introduction, and then we're going to take off straight from here. So I'm sure you ladies are well prepared. So hello. Oh, I'm seeing, I think, Nonye, your daughter really has joined us.
Name.
Your daughter has joined us. She's using another one of your IDs. So she's joined us in the room.
Chineme.
Yes. And also we have Amaye. Amaye, can you hear me?
That's my son.
Okay. You have your whole family online, so that's great. You have good support there.
And I've got Titi Lola there, because I heard you say Titi.
Titi Lola Mabifa is
here.
That's
my best friend.
Very good. And Sinead is here as well. So it's great to see all of you on online at this time. Thank you very much for joining us. So this is Talk Active, and we'll be leading conversations. So I'm just going to do a very brief overview about this webinar. It's going to be taking place as regularly as we can do it. And really it's about inviting leading voices to talk about issues that impact on leadership brands, that impact on business brands. So we'll be talking about issues that affect workplaces, and we'll bring in experts to share their opinions, to share their perspectives about different topics. So absolutely, I'm delighted and I'm excited that you're all here with me. Johanna Baloy, you're welcome. Please indicate to me that you can hear me, that you can see me, that you can see Alexis, that you can see Nonye here. So please give me an indication, maybe a thumbs up or yes, I can see you, whatever, that you can help me to know. Fantastic. Thanks, Joanna, for putting your hands up there and say that you can hear me and you can see me. So very quickly, I'm just going to introduce Dr. Alexis Amaye. So she's originally from the US, but I know that she's Nigerian. She found her roots originally from the US. She came here to live in Ireland, and she's a fantastic woman, fantastic professional. I'm just going to read a bit about her. She brings over 15 years of management experience working across public and private sectors in Europe and in the United States. She has professional and consultative leadership roles in crisis management. We really need your skills right now. Strategic development and program management. She has led cross-functional teams across a number of industries, and with an expertise in operational performance, her interest in technology and decision-making was the focus of her PhD. So she has a lot that she's bringing into the room today. She's bringing into the conversation to lead the conversation. So since 2017, she started Free to Transform, and she has worked with various organizations, multinationals, SMEs, and so many other community groups to support the development in leadership in operational performance and evaluation management. So thank you very much, Dr. Alexis Amaye. It is a great pleasure to have you on Talk Active.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, I must say.
Thank you for having me. I'm listening.
Absolutely. I'll say this.
I'm like, who are you talking to? Who is that person that you're talking about?
You're awesome altogether. You're awesome altogether. I want to say to everybody here that please, indeed, Johanna, please mute yourself. Thank you very much. I want to say to everybody here that you know how technology works. If we do get cut off for whatever reason, please come back into the room. It's going to be fun. So I want to introduce Nonye Mpho Omotola. Nonye, can you hear me?
Yes, I was one of those that got cut off. I was one of those that got cut off, and I'm back again.
And you're back again, exactly. Thank you so much. So Nonye, it's such a pleasure to know you, to have met you, and to find out that we have so many things that we share in common. So we're going to be exploring that more in the coming days, in the coming weeks, in the coming months.
Absolutely.
So Nonye is originally from South Africa and Nigeria.
Nigeria, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
You're gonna have to you have to blame my parents for that one.
I'm blaming them indeed. I'm blaming them indeed. So Nonye is part South African. She's part Nigerian. She lives in South Africa. She's a leading voice there in communications and in building businesses. So just a brief bio about Nonye. So Nonye is a managing director of Africa Communications Media Group based in Johannesburg. She has over 20 years of strategic brand experience gained in the UK. She was actually born in the UK. She was raised in the UK, South Africa, and Nigeria. And she was awarded the Brand Leadership Award at the World Brand Congress in Mumbai, India, for her professional and strategic excellence. She's a member of several professional institutions and has gained extensive work experience with the global PR, branding, and advertising spheres. Nonye is particularly driven by social impact initiatives and the role of effective communications in Africa. Nonye, thank you so much for joining Talk Active in Conversations. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
So once again, I want to thank everyone that's online today. I want to thank Leila Karaya for joining us, Titi Lola, Jamiye, Beatrice, Sinead, everyone that's online right now. As I said, if there's for any reason we're cut off, please feel free to just come back straight into the room. And you please post your questions as we go along. There will be time for question and answers. Our panelists will be able to answer them, but please keep posting them. I'll keep looking at them, keeping notes of them, so that Dr. Alexis Amaye and Nonye Omotola will be able to answer them as we at the Q&A session. So jumping right into it, one of the first things we want to talk about. So let me just bring you back into what the topic is. So we've been talking about COVID, and I dare say that after now, COVID will be a reference point like 9/11. You know, it will be post-COVID, and I'm sure a lot of you will agree with me. So what we want to explore is for organizations that have now experienced the lockdown, they have managed to build up reactive strategies like, remote working, like actually seeking government aids and all of that. They've tried to manage this volatility, this uncertainty, this complexity, this ambiguity in so many different ways. We want to look at what post-COVID would look like. And of course, this is just from our perspective, but I'm sure that the leading voices that we have here in this room today will be able to shed some light on what organizations should be looking at, how they should be thinking about handling post-COVID in terms of the challenges and of course the opportunities that can be harnessed. So that is the topic of our conversation this afternoon. And so please throw in your questions there if you have anything at some stage, and we'll look at a way of answering them. So let me jump right into asking, starting with Dr. Alexis Amaye. So Alexis, talk to us about COVID right now, or shall we just go straight into post-COVID and say, look, what do you think post-COVID would look like for organizations?
Well, it's really hard to say, okay, what does post-COVID look like until we really assess what being in COVID looks like for organizations. And as you mentioned, a number of them are having difficulties even transitioning from being face-to-face organizations to moving to remote work. I think sometimes, we forget that a lot of small and medium businesses and a lot of nonprofits and charitable organizations don't have the same bandwidth as multinationals and larger companies. And so some businesses, the majority of businesses, will not have the luxury of being able to work from home. I'm wearing two hats, even though I'm standing here and sitting in this conversation as a consultant with my own consulting firm. I also have a salon that is not operational and where we've laid off 6 workers. So, once we have a very clear understanding of what being in COVID and responding to COVID looks like as an organization, then we can have a better view of what a post-COVID world would look like. I can tell you, as a business continuity professional, 56% of businesses before COVID did not have business continuity or disaster recovery plans. When Goldman Sachs did a 10,000 small business survey, they found that over 96% of businesses were impacted by COVID. So you're talking about half of them not having any kind of plan, all of them, all of us being impacted. Now, what does that look like after COVID? FEMA does statistics, which is the federal emergency management agency in America. They do statistics on an annual basis on what happens to businesses after a disaster. And what's well established and well known within the industry is that over 40 to 60% of those businesses that do not have a plan in place will close and will not reopen after a disaster. Within a year, 75% of the businesses that are open will be closed. Within 5 years, over 90% of them. So you're talking about figures that can be staggering at the best of times, and when you're talking about a disaster with the complexity of COVID, with the implications of COVID, we will say that it's not going to look like the same. A post-COVID world will be one where it's less about social distancing and more about maintaining and trying to get something that looks like normalcy, and seeing if that does have an ultimate impact in a positive way on businesses. I know that businesses are going to be a lot more agile and a lot more flexible after COVID.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Let me ask Nonye. Nonye, what are your thoughts? What do you think that right now you're based in South Africa? What does COVID look like in South Africa, and what will it look like post-COVID in South Africa?
Okay. So for us, we have been on lockdown. We were meant to, I think for the last 3 weeks, we were meant to come off lockdown from April 16th. And the president...
Can I ask somebody to mute?
Can we have
I'm going to mute everybody, but you can go on, Nonye.
Yeah. So the president announced extension for us to open on the 1st of April. Sorry, on the 1st of May. But he will be doing an announcement this evening whereby he's going to introduce a staggered approach to the opening, and maybe going back to what could be the new normal. But to date, we have done over 130 tests. So 130 people have been tested. And out of those 130 persons, we have roughly 65 people who unfortunately have passed, and about 3,600 who have been positive. So in terms of our percentage rates, we are quite low. They are still saying that there's still going to be a lot of damage to come. Obviously, we're still in the early stages. But I will say that the WHO this morning announced that South Africa actually has done a stunning job, because they have literally sent out over 28,000 community trained nurses to do testing, particularly in the rural areas. They've got about 67 mobile labs which they've put in different strategic places. Yes. And not only that, 2 nights ago, the president introduced a stimulus package of about 500 billion rand. Now, for an economy which is operating at a very low base, that is a huge, that's huge income. 130 billion will be, 130 will go towards health and PPE equipment and testing. 200 will go towards businesses, small businesses and beyond. And then the rest is then going to be given out to the low-income parts of our society, including people who are unemployed. They're going to have added monies to their welfare packages. So literally we can see that the spread of the money is going to go to business as well as to young people who are considered as underserved. But what does that mean when we now come back into post-COVID? Yes. So post-COVID for us definitely is going to be very, it will present huge challenges, because our economy, number one, wasn't operating at a very high base. We actually have recently been downgraded. So, with all the money that we're having to put out into the system, how are businesses going to get back on their feet? And as Alexis was saying, not all businesses are going to survive. Yes. However, people will have to be agile, Yes. But, what does that mean? I mean, everyone keeps on saying the new normal. What does the new normal look like? And I think even from an individual basis, like as I am at home, I'm thinking, what do I want my new normal to look like when I go back, because it's not going to be the same. And we know it's not going to be the same.
Thank you very much. Can I just jump in there and ask you, so what if you're focusing on keywords and we're saying, okay, you're talking about agility now, and you're talking about businesses thinking about what's the new normal. Can you just give us, you know, a kind of, what do you think, what are the examples of strategies that, for example, small businesses can adopt post-COVID to help them navigate the challenges post-COVID?
Well, for number one is like, we've all been operating from home in the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
Do you really need to have bricks and mortar to operate your business? Are you a business that
so
is small enough?
Looking at
yes,
the
working from home, the structures, the working from home model. Do you need the whole office space that you have? Can you do an office sharing space with anyone else who is a small business operator? Or can some of your staff work from home while you have a core team who work from maybe your flexi offices? That kind of thing, to reduce operational costs.
Okay.
So do we necessarily need to have them? Do you have the right kind of staff? Sorry?
So there's going to be a reduction in operations, really, for a lot of
I'm saying that people for a lot of businesses, that there will be a lot of reduction, because it's like, how are we going to run? We need income to run. We need to generate income. And also we need to look probably at all other opportunities for what are the gaps in the industry that we can now seize to become more relevant in this market.
Very good. Let me hold it. Let me ask you to hold your thoughts on that, so we don't jump on the opportunities yet.
All right. Okay. Sorry.
Alexis.
No, but
So
Nonye, you're
question.
Nonye, I think you're absolutely dead on with that. Yeah. I think when we talk about post-COVID businesses, we're talking about how can an organization be more lean? You know, what are the things in terms of the business model? You know, like you said, operational costs. You know, how can we reduce the costs that are coming in? You know, if you are running a business, even if you're sitting at home, you're still responsible for paying your taxes. You're still responsible for paying your rent in your facility. You're still responsible for paying for your utilities. So the price of doing business, because it has been so impacted, that's going to have to change. So how we look at those operating costs. And you're dead on as well in terms of identifying new revenue streams. Where you could have done something face-to-face before, is there an opportunity for you to now leverage your skill set, or leverage your service line, or leverage your product line and create new products and create new marketplaces where you can deliver your products? I think particularly in the African context, we're going to see a post-COVID world that face-to-face interactions is going to be, it's going to be specific and it's going to be targeted, but it's going to have to be directed towards a digital platform. So digital transformation is going to be absolutely critical for African business. For European businesses, you're going to see a stratification, you know, and even when you're looking at the stimulus packages, it's many countries in the West that are offering those types of stimulus packages. You don't see a distribution at the same extent as you see with South Africa. You know, there's been a lot of argumentation in America and in Ireland about how quickly the funds that were allocated for small businesses have been consumed by massive corporations. That's one thing, but then how do you take care of the person that's on the street? How do you take care of the regular Jane, you know, Jane or John that are Femi and on the street that's trying to survive and who not survive? 60% of most Africans are day earners. So
and I'm gonna ask you to talk more about that.
In their hand, that changes their lifestyle.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Alexis, for that. And I'm going to ask you to just talk more about that. And I'm going to ask Nonye also to talk about that. So from an African, or let me not just say African, from a developing economy, emerging markets perspective, developing economy perspective, what are those challenges post-COVID? Because one of the things I learned during this lockdown was that African leaders like to import solutions from the West without necessarily targeting the people or fitting it into the narrative of the people or into the social-cultural background of the people. So, for example, you're talking about lockdown. I'm originally from Nigeria. Talking about lockdown in Nigeria, where a lot of the people live in face me. They call it face me, I face you type of housing systems, where you're just, your neighbor is in your face and you're in your neighbor's face. So one of the things that Africans should not do is import those solutions that the West is gradually coming up with post-COVID.
Absolutely.
So if
you know,
the
WHO,
about that, Alexis.
I was going to say that sorry for interrupting you there. There's a little bit of a feedback delay.
Yeah, there's a lag, yes.
But the WHO director had indicated that, they found that they were communicating with the world, but they were using English and French, and they were using different terminology, they were using different contexts that did not resonate with the world. And so even if worldwide organizations are having to reformulate and think clearly about the messages that they're giving and the directives that they're giving, it's going to be even more important for organizations within governments, within the countries themselves to do so. I think that, when we talk about post-COVID, as I mentioned, while we're sitting in COVID, the biggest issue is how do we get access to supplies? Where is our supply chain? And anytime we talk about business continuity, we talk about it in the context of who are your manufacturers and who's doing the producing. If that's not happening within your country, you've already started to lag behind. And so one of the very first things that organizations, businesses, and governments are going to have to face is the reality, the harsh truth that's associated with outsourcing a lot of their own internal industries, and how that now has really come back to haunt them. And how privatization is not the answer, that certain things government is going to have to do, and is going to have to do better. Absolutely. And so if that means that they have to leverage then public and private partnerships, that's a part of the dialogue. So, I think that what we have to be very careful and cautious of doing is trying to forecast too far out and really take in what we are experiencing right now to say, okay, these are the reasons why we've got to change certain things. You're talking, just as an example, the global floral industry. All right, I'm having a wedding. I'm not getting married, but just say hypothetically, someone's having a wedding. They're going to order flowers. They're going to order a caterer. You're going to have a venue. So all of those things have now been impacted. The hotel isn't open. He's not getting any business. The florist is not open. But okay, now let's look at the florist. That florist doesn't have access to the supply chain because that $8.3 billion industry is now stopped. Amsterdam, the place where all of these flowers come from, coming from Kenya, coming from the Middle East, coming from China, that has stopped. And so we have to be, like, as I said, cautious of projecting too far out so that we can assess what is its impact today. What is its impact in the immediate future, and how can we stagger our response so that we can come back stronger and be more resilient?
Thank you so much. So let me ask Nonye, do you have any thoughts on that in terms of the African context and how Africa can navigate through this post-COVID challenges? What are the challenges that you see?
Okay, so for where Alexis stopped, I was just thinking, we actually are in the challenges now. The challenges have become more apparent. The gap between those that have and those that don't have, very apparent. The infrastructure deficit, very apparent. We need to look at our public health care. We need to look at the public health sector, because if our public health sector was top notch, and not just in South Africa, I mean across the whole of Africa.
Absolutely.
These are one of the other things I was saying. Youth form the largest part of the demographics of Africa. We are about 70% in terms of youth. How are we utilizing the youth? Where is the innovation? And for those who are innovative, how are they supported by our governments? Yes. These are some of the things that are currently happening, but now more apparent. And how do we address them going forward?
Very good.
Do you understand? And also, when we talk about the poor, we have low levels of poverty. Still living in shacks, like you were saying, face me, I face you. How do we address them going forward? How do we address them from point of view? Does everybody need to go to university and then come out and not find a job? Okay. Can people be trained in the ordinary skills of carpentry, plumbing, electricity, whatever it is? And I think we that make up the citizens have to put people into positions and make sure they are accountable. We in Africa, we do not challenge our leaders. We don't challenge government. We just accept everything. Whatever they say, we do. We complain in our corners, but we're not challenging and we're not occupying the roles that are there to be occupied.
Yeah, so
absolutely. No,
sorry, Alexis. So you're saying that, you know, post-COVID, if we haven't that culture of holding our leaders accountable and challenging their decision, challenging them to be better leaders, post-COVID, that's one of the things that Africa should actually be looking at in order to be able to come out, you know, in a better way at the other side. Yes, is that what you're saying?
I am saying that we now, those of us that think that we can, we need to start speaking. We need to start acting. We need to start challenging, because if we don't, we're leaving the state of Africa behind for our children and our children's children. So those of us that can, we should start, because it's been apparent. Even in America, you can see they've got over, in New York, over 40 deaths, and they have infrastructure, right? You were talking earlier about the crisis contingency plans. Which one of us were prepared for a pandemic across Africa? I don't think any of us were.
I think Nonye, it's worldwide. You know, you're talking about worldwide. You know, when I look at this, I'm looking at this from the perspective of H1N1 in 2009, and every single thing that was told in boosting the capability of public health response was not done. And so now you fast forward 10 years and you have a real pandemic, not a pretend pandemic, and your infrastructure hasn't changed. You haven't modernized the system. You're not, if anything, you're taking resources out of the system to supplant, to put other places. So I think prioritization is going to change in the post-COVID world. You know, people are arguing about how Americans are getting out and protesting. You can only put an American in the house for about 2 weeks before they get out. You know, and so, you know.
Can I step in there? Can I interrupt for a moment, Alexis? Thanks very much for your contribution. Let's bring it to Europe. We talked about Africa. Before we start talking about the opportunities that we can harness, that we see and we can harness. What about the North? What about Europe? What about, you know, a small country like Ireland? What do you see as the challenges post-COVID?
I would say the biggest challenge would be countries wanting to close their doors, wanting to shut themselves off and be in isolation. You've instructed your population to be in isolation. It doesn't mean that the country has to be in isolation. And so information sharing is going to be critical in a post-COVID world. You know, when I'm writing an article, I'm looking at it from perspective of who's doing it best. I don't care what country they're coming from. I will applaud France for saying at the front of it, hey, you're telling me that the numbers are going to look like we're going to have to close for the next 3 months. Okay, let's set a moratorium in place so that no residential, no commercial customer has to worry about being put out. They're not going to be expected to pay rents for the next 3 months. Once something like that was done, it's momentous in terms of, okay, let's applaud France, but why weren't the other countries following suit as a best practice? When Austria said that they were going to impose financial burdens on people that broke their isolation requirements, they stepped up on that. You know, so information sharing is going to be absolutely critical, particularly in the EU. And you know, and this is not just post-COVID; this is post-Brexit. Yeah. I think England has realized that it needs the EU as much as the EU needs England. Mm-hmm. You know, and so we're going to have different dialogues about what is important to not just the economy, but what's important to people. And what I love about looking at it, at the challenge of COVID from the perspective of a business continuity person, is looking at the opportunity that we have to really come back to the things that matter. The world was moving too fast, and we were too preoccupied with things that didn't matter. When we have public health crises, health matters. Our well-being matters. When you're stuck in your house for 3 weeks, your mental health matters.
Absolutely.
So, my next article is going to be on addiction in crisis, because let's be honest about these things.
Oh my God. You'll find a lot of people will be good. If you're taking a poll, you find a lot of people will be respondents on that. Can I bring it now back to the opportunities? But I want to zero in on small businesses more. We want to talk about, because small businesses are usually the ones hard hit when it comes to these kind of issues, you know, because global organizations are hit as well, but not as much as small business, because they are vulnerable, really vulnerable. So talk to us about what the challenges are that, what the opportunities are that small businesses can harness. Are there any opportunities from post-COVID, or is it all gloom and doom? Are there anything that we can leverage on?
You know, small businesses are the lifeline of any economy,
Absolutely.
of any economy. And your small businesses aren't working, you don't have a population that works, you know, and that's around the world. Yes. And so anything that is done it is imperative that it identifies the needs and getting what small businesses require, whether it's cash flow, whether it's access to capital, whether it's preference in terms of bidding contracts that are going to be issued by governments, whether it's preference in supply chain requirements, making sure that they have the necessary PPE so their workers can get back to work. You know, as I'm walking down the streets of Ireland in Cork, I'm already seeing for lets and for sale signs going up for businesses that had recently opened. You know, a business owner, a small business owner is thinking about cash flow, and not in the form of loans, but in the form of cash. So, you know, I don't know how it looks in South Africa. I'd be really interested in hearing what's happening there in terms of small businesses.
Yes, Nonye, let's hear you, please.
Yeah, well, they're struggling. I just said that we have just been introduced a stimulus package.
Yes.
Just 2 nights ago, a rather large one. As to when we're going to receive the monies, no, but I mean, it is commendable. What I will say in terms of the opportunity, I haven't been out. I mean, literally, I just go to the groceries. I'm not even allowed to drink alcohol, so I'll gladly participate in your addiction drink whatever COVID. I'm not no wine. No, we're not allowed here.
Addiction, yeah?
No, but in my own case, a glass of wine can help. But anyway, basically, what I'm just trying to say is that maybe there's opportunity for small businesses to collaborate. I just read an article recently about net florists who obviously, they deliver flowers, but they've got a huge database of customers. And guess what? Now that they're in this season, they've decided they're going to, with their database, they will also distribute groceries through partnering with Uber Eats. We're not allowed to buy food or commercial food, but Uber is transporting groceries to anyone who needs them. So net florists that used to supply flowers have got a database of existing customers, contacting them to find out if they need groceries. If they do need groceries, they use Uber. So there's a collaboration going on, right? Fantastic. So that's an opportunity. Maybe from like I said about bricks and mortar, maybe small businesses, instead of everybody being in their own house or their own office building, maybe we can share office space together. If we feel that will help us to reduce operational costs, that's an opportunity there. Maybe we can look at other things that we can be doing. I mean, I think digital obviously is where everybody's going to cut down on a lot of costs. I mean, we as Africa Communications, we travel a lot. We travel a lot across the continent, and sometimes the guys in the office know when I don't want to go somewhere because I'm like, oh my gosh, here I go again. Maybe sometimes I don't need to get on the airplane and go and sort somewhere. Maybe we can do everything online, not all the time, obviously, because you need to have, in Africa, you need to have the one-on-one stakeholder engagement. But maybe we can reduce costs that way, and maybe we can do a lot of our stuffs virtual, like we're doing now with this webinar. We can do things online, and then skills development. You know, we have a lot of people who who have graduated from university, who maybe have dropped out from school and are unemployed, have nowhere to go. Maybe we can now upskill people on the skills that are relevant for today, for now, for going forward. You know, maybe now public health nurses and nurses in particular, and all these gentlemen and ladies that we're calling heroes and essential workers, maybe they can have increased packages on their salary. Maybe they mustn't be the underdogs. Maybe we can, that people want to go into that field, because remember before the pandemic, we were all tech, raising capital, equity, all of us, right? We were all there. But these guys they're the ones that are maintaining and serving us in the shops. And so maybe some of those things we can look at in terms of training. And recently they were talking about our national carrier airline, South African Airways, will not most likely lose all their stuff because they can't, they don't have enough capital to run. But I was thinking that maybe some of those guys who have worked for years in South African Airways can go and be customer experience officers for some other companies, because their job is to be hostesses. So it's about how do we transfer skills, and how do we utilize what we have to go where we're going.
Absolutely. And this is where it's vitally important that you have your small businesses, because that's going to be the thinking of a small business owner that's saying, I need to be more flexible. I need to be more agile. I need to be able to pivot quickly and adapt my business to change. So, you know, I love how you hit on that last piece in terms of upskilling. You know, there's going to be a different prioritization of what matters for the new economy going forward. You know, and it's not going to be just what can you do with your head, but what can you do with your hands? You know, we're going to see a different dimension of physical labor, a different dimension of what we call blue collar work. And definitely in the African and the Latin American context, seeing businesses that have always operated face to face and with cash, they're going to have to change. And if they don't change, they're not going to be relevant to the new society. So the benefit that I see coming out of COVID is that for us techies that have been saying tech is coming, no, COVID is showing you that tech is here, and you either get on the train or you will come, no one's coming back, you know? So it's force feeding businesses to think differently about how they engage with their customers, but even more so, how can they get access to a global market? Absolutely. So where you were a service provider, maybe providing trainings and workshops in just your local economy or your local community, can you now provide that through using things like Zoom and expand to a broader marketplace where your customers are also located? If you're making a particular product, can you now hop onto Etsy and now have yourself, it's now forcing you to have an expanded marketplace to distribute your products. So all of those things will matter. And Nonye, the point that you made about businesses having to close, you're going to see a lot of consolidation, but in that consolidation, that knowledge has to be retained. And that knowledge is what will become a profit margin for business that positions itself to be able to support that, or to be able to pivot, help organizations, help their workers pivot to that next phase.
Fantastic. That's absolutely
true. No, I was just saying, I wanted to add that I recently started thinking that maybe I should start learning how to make masks.
Definitely.
That's additional profits. I was thinking maybe that's a profit margin for me, you know. But on a very serious note, I wanted to just add as well, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement that has been reached recently. Maybe this is the time that people need to get serious with it going forward.
And this is where education becomes so vitally important. There are agreements that are in place for Africa in particular, for small and medium businesses to really commercialize into the EU market and into the American markets. It's about awareness. And we have to remember that the average small business owner may not have graduated from college, may not have even graduated from high school. So if you're talking at this level and they have been focusing and succeeding at this level, you've already created a gap where they're not going to be able to attain, and they're not going to be able to adjust, and they're not going to be able to adapt because they don't know what you're talking about. So I think the very first thing when we talk about post-COVID opportunities is someone distilling the content of these stimulus packages, distilling the content of these trade agreements, so that the layman that's on the street that's just ready to hustle can then operate in that new knowledge.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. Thank you so much, ladies. I'm going to just ask us to pause for a moment to take some comments and some questions that I see coming in, so that we don't take them all at once. So someone says, definitely need to be cautious trying to project forward, not beyond the realms of a possibility that how we socialize will change. Social distancing may be here to stay for a while. That's a comment. So all businesses that relies on social non-distancing will not be business as usual. That is hotels and bars and restaurants and flights. So thanks very much for your comment there. And then there's another comment or question here. Post-COVID may well bring the basic income concept the basic income concept to the forefront. This pandemic has shown social economic inequalities that do not bode well for a stable world. Thanks very much for those comments. Any thoughts on those comments, ladies?
Particularly that last comment.
Yeah.
You know, when Ireland first issued its stimulus, they said they were going to give people €208 a week. And I'm sure somebody's wife said, what am I going to do with $200 a week? Honey, I'm used to making $800 a week. Can you bump it up a little bit? And so, you know, for the average worker, we're now, you know, the average worker is now entitled to $350. In the States, they gave a stimulus package. If you were undocumented, you didn't get access to it. So what we call a basic income is going to have to change, because if you weren't making that $1,400 a month, how are you living? Because those that are now being forced to come down to that level, I think they have a new appreciation for two things: people that are living in poverty and people that are living in prison.
Thanks very much. Now I have Vicky Karuga here, says, to be honest, most of those agreements that I'm just talking about, the free trade agreement, are not for the, I'm not getting this, are not for the, I think not for everybody, that's what she means, for the layman. So though it can benefit the layman eventually, Africa needs to focus on us. And I think the us means the layman. And of course, this, as you now rightly said, ladies, there's a time for African leaders to refocus, you know, their strategies on what should work for us for Africans and for those that are thinking about doing business with Africa. A lot of people that have talked to me in the past have talked about what kind of opportunities are there for Africans in diaspora to do more business in Africa. And I think that post-COVID, seeing as the price of oil has hit below zero, that countries will now have to start looking at other ways of making money. Share your thoughts on that, ladies.
Well, I'm going to speak about Nigeria because I know they've been saying for a while that they're trying to diversify economy. It was a punch word at some point. But with oil hitting below zero, and I don't know if it's climbed up any further, if it has, definitely not sitting at around the $53 or $56 it had margined based on the budget. So where do we go from there? Because that is the majority percent, if not 9% of our GDP comes, or growth comes from oil. So all the things that we've been talking about, you have a youthful population, you have people who have come in from diaspora, homegrown intelligentsia. How are we sustaining these guys? What kind of, we're talking about basic income. Do we even have a welfare state as we currently sit? We don't. People have to fend for themselves. Again, I go back to infrastructure. What is the infrastructure that can keep the supply chain going? If there's no electricity, how do you produce? Right. Do you understand what I'm saying? So for me, it's like taking the things that people know that they're supposed to be doing, that are supposed to be done. You're talking about public-private partnerships. We see some of that, but it's always the same people that we hear their names. It's the same people, the Dangotes, the great jobs that they're doing. But there are so many other people. And so for me, I would like to see sustained innovation and to the raising up of the youth in their various skill sets, in all the initiatives that they're running. How are they being supported? I don't know if there's any packages to support such businesses in our countries. I don't know that is there a plan for there to be a basic income level? Because we don't have, I mean, I know Buhari has some stimulus package, but for the life of me, to be very honest, I didn't really read much about it because I didn't think it really meant that much, right? Because I've lived in Nigeria, I know some of the challenges that people face, right? So I would say youth for me is critical, investing in our youth and widening the diversification of skills, whether it's agriculture, whether it's technology, whether it's media, engineering, architecture, because we need development on the continent, but we always go and say we're going to do these things and never get them done.
Thank you very much. I know Alexis wants to say something there. Just have a comment here from one of our attendees. Dolapo says, education on accessing opportunities is what needs to be taught, and absolutely bang on. There are organizations that aggregate small-scale farmers in places around Nigeria. So indeed, I think that is really spot on, that people know that there are opportunities, but they don't know how to recognize those opportunities. They don't know how to access those opportunities. And those are kind of supports that I think small businesses would need post-COVID, because definitely there are opportunities that can be harnessed, can be assessed, but how do we access?
I think they need my communication skills. I better go and start consulting for the government.
You know, we're gonna get back. We're gonna get back to a place where the basics, you know, where it's about the basics, you know, and for a lot of businesses on the continent, you know, that have been struggling with cash in hand businesses, they're going to have to elevate their skill set. There's an opportunity there in that elevation. They're going to have to be able to access new opportunities and identify new markets. There's an opportunity for another business. They're going to have to be able to produce on scale or produce and manufacture more quickly. There's another opportunity there. So I think how we have to change our thinking of the challenge that COVID presents so that we can see those opportunities more clearly. We all know that necessity is the mother of invention. And when it comes to invention, we are a very inventive people. You know, and you can hear an American accent, but you also see that there's a love for Africa. And so, you know, there's going to be an opportunity for not just Africans on the continent, but Africans outside of the continent to be able to leverage the skill set, the knowledge, and as you said, Nonye, the youth. Africa, that's why China's interested in Africa. Let's not forget that, you know, and so governance and conversations about governance, you know, the responsibility for the business community will be on making sure that they're holding governments accountable. And when we talk about Africa 30 years from now, we're talking to female-led businesses. So making sure that their female-led businesses have the capacity to not only produce and scale, but also have the capacity to get access to the capital that they need in order to thrive. And so, you know, the conversation that I would love to be hearing out of the African Union is one that says across the continent, this is the standard that we want to establish. It's not about creating a welfare state, but about creating the necessary networks in order to support society.
Fantastic.
And not by development aid either.
No, we should be done with that. Let's say we're done with that, you know. And let me bring it back to Europe. Let me bring it back to the West and bring it back to Ireland. How can small businesses, and when I say small business, I'm talking also about the micro businesses. We know that there are a lot of, so let me not just zone in on African businesses here in Ireland, but let me talk a bit about them. How can they do better, you know, post-COVID, especially leveraging on the, Nonye talked about collaboration.
I think it starts first with not being isolated. You know, a lot of businesses, particularly I find that in the diaspora experience here in Europe, a lot of businesses are super competitive, unnecessarily so. You know, if I'm a service provider and you're a service provider, why don't we leverage our energies and get access and make ourselves look more attractive and bigger so that we can, you know, be more attractive for contracts. If you're providing a product, you know, within a shop, you know, I'm always looking for anyone that's able to create innovative products because I have a customer base, you know, so I think it's getting back to, again, the basics of business, which is if you don't have the cash, you're not able to do much. And so how do you obtain revenue that is not only lucrative to the business, but is dependable and that is stable? And how do you generate that in a way that doesn't compromise your morals, compromise your integrity, and results in mutual benefit? It's about mutual benefit. And I think for a lot of businesses, African businesses, and particularly here in Europe, they're going to come face to face with the morality of how they do business. And it's not about competition, it's about cooperation. And we have a lot of positive examples to that in the Caribbean and to America and Latin America that we can look to, that we can learn from. And so as an educator, I'm constantly looking for those opportunities to share it, but we've got to be more collaborative and more creative and purposeful in creating those spaces and opportunities to flourish naturally and organically.
Thank you very much. I'm going to pick your brains a little bit more because we're talking about Europe and because you're based here. I want to talk more about how African-owned business, Black-owned businesses here in Europe can do more, because you talked about not isolating, you know, bringing ourselves out there and helping people see who we are, what we do, and how well we can do it. Absolutely. What are the practical steps that post-COVID small businesses can take, especially Black-owned businesses, to step out there more and be more well-known with the indigenous communities?
Right. I think you have to start first with knowing where you are and knowing where you stand as a business. What are your finances looking like? What are your revenue streams looking like? How are you making money? What are the services and the products that you're delivering to the marketplace?
So being very,
if you don't have clarity on that, it's kind of hard to move forward.
Absolutely.
You know?
So you're saying, Alexis, that business needs to be very clear about that. It needs to be very, very definite about all of those questions and answer them.
Absolutely. That's the first step. And then I would say then the next step is making sure that you have some kind of digital presence. We're living in a digital age, and people are quick to say, I'm living in a digital age. But what does that mean for you and your business? That means that just having a static Facebook page is not enough. Having Instagram is not enough. You need to be having dialogue with your customer base. And if you don't know what you're selling, you don't know who you're talking to. So when we talk about opportunity recognition, we're talking about it from a perspective of, I have a problem, here's my solution. I'm trying to give that solution to a particular customer. I need to know where that customer is, what they like, who they're talking to, where they're having those conversations, so I can be there. So it's a different type of thinking about getting customers and getting new customers by starting first from a basic sales, a basic business assessment and business analysis. I would then say the third step is to do something. You know, we can talk until we're blue in the face, and Africans, we're good at talking. It's about action at this moment. And when you look at why Vietnam and why Korea didn't have the same impact of COVID as the rest of the world, is because they learned from their mistakes, and they made sure that when something like that comes around, they're going to have the capacity, and their people trust their government. So if the government says stay home, they stay home, and that's why their numbers are as low as they are. So it's a complex issue, but it goes back to the basics. Know what your business is, know the services that you're providing, make sure that you have a digital presence, and that you're engaging in that conversation, and make sure that you have something that's relevant to the marketplace.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm going to have a final word from Nonye here. I'm just going to ask you to zero in on the small businesses in Africa particularly, and what are the practical things that they can do. I mean, Alexis had talked about this environment and the fact that we have all those infrastructure. So we're coming back to places that have no infrastructure, and they're kind of like starting from the basics really. What are the things, the practical things that they can do to leverage on COVID, post-COVID?
I think we've talked about that. We've touched on some of them earlier. For me, it's all about agility and collaboration. I mean, a couple of nights ago, you were speaking to me, and I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this webinar because my hair is in a terrible state due to this lockdown. And I was able to speak to a lady who normally does my hair. She walks across the road near the pharmacy. I was able to pick her up with her mask, with her gloves, with her whatever. And she sat down under my balcony and did my hair yesterday. And I said to her, how are you going to work post-COVID? She works in the salon, right? Salon is closed, we can't go to the salon. How are you going to work post-COVID? And if you're from South Africa here, don't announce this thing that I've done, because I'm not sure it's against the whatever. But anyway, so I said, how are you going to work post-COVID? And she said, oh, she doesn't know. She's not going to be able to afford the rent in the salon or whatever. I said, start doing mobile services. This is your product. Yeah. Start doing mobile services. Find someone who you can collaborate with to do nails, eyelashes, for those of us who like the tutti fruities, and collaborate so that when you are coming, you are coming with hair, nails, and the package. Do you understand? And if you don't want to come with other people, then you just focus on the hair. Maybe learn an extra skill. Learn how to do nails, or learn how to do the lashes. Then you collaborate with an Uber. So you have an Uber driver who is your partner for your deliveries, and we know that when you're coming, you come with a neat bag, not this plastic bag. You're coming with overstuffed things. You come with a bag, professional. Everything is in that bag. You come. We know that you're coming. You book the appointment. I said, and guess what? Whilst you're doing that, every time when you cross with your customer, you now estimate in the next 4 weeks, she may need me. Or in the next 3 weeks, she may need me. You send her WhatsApp. You keep up your customer database, your engagement.
Having those conversations, yes.
You do very well.
Yeah.
So that's a classic example.
Thank you so much. I really have enjoyed every bit of this. And I wonder if any of our attendees have any questions, any further questions. Please do leave your comments. Please do leave your feedback. It's really been, thank you, Sinead. It's really been a really enlightening time with you ladies. The bottom line is that we do need to have a different way of thinking post-COVID. Every one of us, whether it be governments, whether it be multinationals, small businesses, anyone should have a new way of thinking. A new way of thinking starts now, really, not when the lockdown is fully over. So thank you so much. Please leave your comments. I'd like to know what you think about this webinar. And I'd also like to say thank you so much to Alexis Amaye, Dr. Alexis Amaye. You're fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for facilitating this, Thulani. Thank you. This was an amazing conversation.
Yes, and we want to lead conversations that impact on leadership brands, that impact on business brands, and getting you talking about those kind of things that make us successful in business. So please watch the space. Please follow me on Twitter at Tolu Akahome. Follow me on Instagram, the Toluwani Akahome, and follow me on Facebook. You can also follow Vantage Dymensions. This event is powered by Vantage Dymensions. And definitely, if you want to get in touch with our panelists, please email me or get in touch with me on any of the social media platforms, and I'll connect you with them. They have a lot to share. They run courses as well. So if you're interested in doing a course with Alexis Amaye, she's more than available for you. She's a fantastic coach as well. And if you want to run courses on your communication strategy for your business with Nonye Omotola, I can definitely tell you I'm bringing her on so many other things. So this is me and her on a different leg of a journey. So definitely.
Hopefully by then we'll be able to have a glass of wine, I hope. By then.
We'll see, as long as we don't get addicted on anything. So thank you so much. Please, ladies, leave your comments there about how you feel we can improve on this webinar as well. And we're going to leave it off here in another 1 minute. Any last words, last comments from any of, okay, yeah, I see that we have some comments here. Someone said, very useful session, lots to think about. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Whoever wrote that, we do appreciate you. Naomi says, we need more of these, especially for us African youths in Europe. Amazing. Thank you, Naomi. And congratulations again on your baby. Naomi just had a baby girl. And thank you so much to the next person who said, thank you so much. Looking forward to the next webinar called Post-COVID. So thank you very much, everyone. We're going to leave it here. God bless you. I do appreciate you lots.
Thank you. Thank you
so much.